All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. I mean, it's the beginning. Yes. Happy New Year. Happy 2025. I figured since it's our first meeting, of the new year, that I would get this resounding good morning. Like everybody's really excited to be here. So we're going to try it again. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, exactly. So I'd like to call the MPO Policy Committee meeting to order. It's 9:33. I'd like to also remind everyone that this meeting is being live streamed. Members, in order for online attendees, just as a reminder, for them to hear your comments, please remember to unmute your microphone when speaking. And also identify yourself when making or sending a motion so that the secretary, of course, can capture who is making the motion. And for anyone that's in attendance via Zoom today, as a reminder, please complete, or that's actually in the room today, actually remember to complete the sign-in sheet that's located in the hallway before you leave. And if you wish to make a public comment, please fill out the public comment card and return it to a staff member. Now, for those that are participating via Zoom, please keep your microphone muted unless you are called upon to speak. And when appropriate on the agenda, we will request comments from those online, and you can indicate your desire to speak via the chat box. Staff is monitoring Zoom and will recognize you when it's time to speak. So at this time, I'd like to have Erin please call the roll.
Great. Thank you. I'll just ask that you identify yourself when I call the agency. IDOT?
Holly Beaneman.
Thank you. A CDOT?
David Pope.
CMAP, Frank Beal? Thank you. CMAP, Mayor Brawley?
Here.
Class 1 Railroads? Cook County? Council of Mayors?
Mayor Shelkey.
Thank you. CTA?
Molly Poppy.
DuPage County?
Steve Travia.
FHWA? FTA? Illinois State Toll Highway Authority?
Present.
Kane County?
Tom Rickard here.
Kendall County? Lake County?
Shane Schneider on behalf of County Board Chair Hart.
Thank you. McHenry County?
Scott Hennings on behalf of Chair Bueller.
Metra?
David Kralik on behalf of Jim Derwinski.
Pace?
Melinda Metzger.
RTA?
Jill Leary.
And Will County.
Thank you. We have a quorum in the room. I have received a couple of requests from Shane Schneider, Jennifer Siskillen, and Matt Browley to participate today remotely in this meeting. And in compliance with the Open Meetings Act, it requires a majority vote of the body. So at this time, can I get a motion to approve virtual participation?
I was so moved.
Is there a second? Thank you. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. It looks as if we have, this has passed, so let's the secretary mark them present and able to participate on matters of the committee. So at this time, let's move on to section 2.0 of the agenda. I do not have any changes to the agenda before me. So the agenda is as prepared. But before we move on to section 3 to look at the minutes from our last meeting, I just want to offer a few remarks. So again, I'm Cassandra Rouse, the Executive Director for the Illinois Tollway, and I greet you this morning as Vice Chair, of the committee. However, today I'm serving as Chair because Secretary Osmond, as of December 31st, has retired from the Illinois Department of Transportation. And so at the time that I took on I was appointed the vice chair, which I'm very thankful to be serving in this capacity. I told Omar, I said, oh, great, we're going to be continued partners as we march to 2025. And then he came out and he said, well, you know what, Cassandra, I'm actually retiring in December. I'm like, wait, what are you doing? So I just wanted to just take a moment to really thank Secretary Osmond for, of course, his over 35 years as and being involved with the Illinois Department of Transportation and his recent leadership as secretary. Great partners, you know, not only just for the tollway, but each and every one of us in this room, just to really help deliver transportation infrastructure related projects and just initiatives through. And so I just applaud, you know, the very successful the career that he has had over that time period. After so many years in the industry, I really, you know, thought again that he'd be in this room, but I even thought that he would come today and appear on this Zoom just because, but looks like he decided to sleep in, but I'm sure he'll pop up at some point as we move through 2025. But in the words of our former Secretary Osmond, you know, he always said that this is just a great time to be in transportation, and truly it is. And so, again, I'm just thankful to be here today. And I know that, again, 2025 will be yet another monumental year. Well, we will tackle many transportation-related conversations and really advance some solutions to meet the challenges that we face individually as leaders and collectively as a region. So happy 2025 to everyone, and I look forward to greeting the new Secretary of Transportation, Gia Biaggi, you know, at our next meeting in March. And I know that as she starts mid-month in January, that we will all, again, welcome her back into the fold, and I'm looking forward to her joining us at the hip to, again, tackle many things that we have to tackle in 2025. So with that, let's move on with our agenda. 3.0, approval of minutes. So at this time, you've been provided with the minutes to review prior to the meeting, and you have them before you. So can I get a motion to approve the October 9th, 2024 meeting minutes?
Mayor Shelkey will so make that motion.
Second?
Rickard, seconds.
Thank you. Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? The ayes have it, the motion passes. If we can now move on to CMAP announcements, I'll move over to 4.01 of our agenda today and turn things over to our Executive Director's report. Erin.
Great. Well, thank you so much, and welcome to our January 1st meeting of the year. You stole a little bit of my thunder here. I did want to thank you for not only being vice chair this year, and this is your first meeting serving as vice chair, Director Rouse, but also chairing the meeting as we have sort of an interim gap before Secretary Biaggi starts. So thank you. And again, I'll just emphasize that we too appreciate Secretary Osmond's leadership on key critical issues across the region, and especially being a partner to all of us as we've thought about some of the challenges throughout the COVID pandemic, and thinking about how we continue to innovate and deliver transportation projects across this region. He was a good supporter of the region, and we look forward to working with Secretary Biaggi on similar issues. And I've had a preliminary conversation with her. I know she's excited about this work and excited to continue the projects that we're partnering on together. Of particular interest is the 290 Blue Line CDO project as well that we've recently kicked off. I also want to congratulate the Illinois Tollway on the completion of their stakeholder advisory team report. I know a lot of work went into this over the past year, CMAP, and many of you around the table participated in their workshops, which I thought were highly engaging and different and new and energizing, and brought a lot of really good strategic thoughts and multimodal needs to the surface. And Tollway has been such a good leader in that space as well. So I know that this program, this report is going to help you define program goals and provide guidance on the scope and impact of your next long-range capital plan for the region. And so congratulations on meeting that milestone.
Thank you.
And did you want to say anything about that?
Yes. So thank you very much, Erin, and thank you for your participation, the voices that you brought to the discussion from a CMAP perspective. And yes, it was a journey, a very successful one with the 43 leaders that we had a part of the team. We successfully, at the end of December, the board approved the $2 billion Bridging the Future program as an interim capital program just to help us initiate some projects that we know we need to do, projects that, you know, can be in the planning phases to ensure that we are ready for projects to be shovel-ready in the next longer-term program, which we will announce here in 2025. So we're thankful for everyone's support and continued support as we march through this journey. So we look forward to really having a direct impact on how we're delivering infrastructure projects, you know, in partnership with transit, in partnership with Illinois Department of Transportation and others. So thanks again, more to come.
Yeah. All right, so I'll get into more of the technical updates that I have, but first I just wanted to say that I know our federal partners aren't here because of the National Day of Mourning for the passing of President Carter. So just have kept sort of the spirit of his innovation in mind these past couple days as I've watched the news and have him lay in state today. Also thinking about our partners in California, I know that each of us have peers and counterparts there as they're dealing with the wildfires. I know more to come on that, but I wish them better weather and an ability to sort of control the fires that are raging there. So thinking about our partners as well. But with 2024 in the rearview mirror, I wanted to share some updates from our team because we've had a busy and productive last couple months here, and not just on the regional scale, but also globally. So I'll share that in mid-December, I had the pleasure of joining the delegation trip to Munich and Berlin to really learn from Deutsche Bahn and local leaders about how they tackle transit in Germany. I think a couple things that I wanted to share with you was just that there were many senators, Senator Ram Villavalam, Representative Delgado joined, who sponsored the legislation that led to the PART report, but also just a selection of other legislators who are deeply passionate about making sure that transit is successful across the region. I think some of the key takeaways that we heard from leaders is that, you know, it's always a little bit messy behind the scenes, even though they really care about the service and make it seem seamless. But they've also been working at this for decades, and they have a little bit different funding structure as well. And it does cost a lot of money to make sure that the system is successful. So we really had some hands-on ridership experience. We got to ride on the high-speed rail between Munich and Berlin that went 187 miles per hour, which was pretty exciting. But I think ultimately it did a good job of priming legislators for the work that is to come ahead here. And it also makes me think of some of the other innovations for transit funding that we're seeing happen across the country, including the introduction of congestion pricing program in New York City. So I think as I look to the future, I'm optimistic that there are ways that we can begin to solve this funding crisis that we have in front of us. Back to some other engagement activities. Vicki Barrett on our team, who you've heard talk about our safety action plan and our speed policy paper, had the opportunity to join World Business Chicago in Osaka, Japan, which is one of Chicago's sister cities, to talk about best practices and challenges in creating people-centered places on our streets, which included both public sector and private sector organizations, and joined Kimberly Bears, who's president and CEO of the Magnificent Mile Association. So also attending were representatives from Paris, New York, and Melbourne, Australia. It was an honor to be invited to this, and I know Vicki represented some of the work that we're doing across the region to make our streets safer and more community focused. I know our team leading the Safe Travel for All Regional Safety Initiative is excited to continue the work into 2025 here. They are actively promoting online engagement for all of the 6 participating counties, Cook, DuPage, Kane, Lake, McHenry, and Will. And people can drop safety hotspots on maps, identifying places where we should be focused on safety interventions across our region. People will be entered into a pool, what's the word, a raffle, thank you, sorry, to get a $100 gift card for their participation. But so far, the teams have collected over 2,500 safety concern locations from over 1,100 people across the region. I think that's a fairly good way to kick off this initiative. We greatly appreciate your support. If you have newsletters or other ways for us to share this information, our team is happy to share that with you and make sure that we're spreading the word about this work as well. On the technical assistance front, CMAP was thrilled to be a part of the Austin Coming Together 2024 Membership Awards. CMAP and the Urban Land Institute were recognized for our collaborative work on the Central Avenue redevelopment project, which was recently completed. We're honored to be recognized and look forward to the recommendations in the Austin plan being implemented. We also recently released a new report called the Risk-Based Vulnerability Assessment that uses the latest data to analyze climate risk across our region. It identifies some of the biggest climate challenges and the biggest threats, where they're located, which transportation assets are most at risk, and how that heat might affect transit riders as well. So I would encourage you to take a look at the report, the data set, and the map, which you can find in the news update on the CMAP website. On the legislative front, our intergovernmental affairs team is gearing up for a robust legislative session here in January, with funding for Northeastern Illinois' transit system being a top priority for legislators, advocates, and stakeholders. We'll continue to engage the General Assembly, offering our input when requested, really to be able to support them with information from the PART report and beyond. Additionally, we're going to continue to seek additional appropriations as laid out for the work in the Regional Planning Act, making sure that we can continue to fully fund the requirements that we have as an agency that go beyond just the MPO requirements, but our work in housing and the environment, and really begin to sort of think about the holistic needs of our region. So we will continue to engage you all, your legislative teams, about that as we continue to work on full funding for CMAP. Our team also will continue to track legislation before the Illinois General Assembly that impacts the region and is relevant to the work. So if you have things that you would like us to track or questions that you might have, I know my IGA team is available for you as well. As a reminder, our team will present our 25-26 advocacy agenda to this committee following the board's approval next week. The agenda will outline our key policy priorities that will help address the region's challenges and really set us up for success in the future. And I think, well, that's really focused on, it's focused on both state and federal. I think a lot of us have been talking about the next administration, the federal administration, and where our opportunities are to continue to be engaged in that conversation. Transportation reauthorization has come up many times as I've talked to partners across the region. One positive note is that the current transportation bill goes through 2026. And so we know that folks in DC and across the country are starting to talk about what the policies might be that would be included in the next transportation bill. And so we do have a little bit of stability here for a known, I suppose, as opposed to a known unknown. But I do think that there are some opportunities for us to be working together as a region and identifying things that are critically important that can help us continue to preserve and enhance the assets that we have. For example, freight, I think, is a really great example where we're going to be able to find some synergies over the next few years here and talk about how our role and our critical transportation network helps support the country's economy here. So last reminder here is that last month CMAP sent annual invoices to our counties, municipalities, and transportation partners. We're asking that these are due this month. I know you all know, but Federal Highways, USDOT requires a 20% local match to make sure that we are getting our federal dollars here to support the regional initiatives here. So I want to thank you all for your continued support and contributions to CMAP and our regional work. With that concludes my executive director's report. I'm happy to answer any questions that you all might have. Okay, moving on. I know Leanne isn't here. I'll go ahead and give the CMAP board update. Is that the board last met in October at the joint meeting with your committee. Their November meeting was canceled and they typically don't meet in the month of December. So the board will meet again on Monday, January 13th. So this upcoming Monday. I will turn it over now to Mayor Schilke to give the Council of Mayors Executive Committee report.
Well, thank you. And to kind of piggyback on a couple of things Aaron has just said, on behalf of the Council of Mayors, we'd also like to wish now retired Secretary Osmond the best in his days going forward. He's been a good partner to work with. He's understood us. He seems to, when you had a project that you wanted to talk to him, he had probably already had himself briefed before you met with him, so he knew what was going on. So he was a very in-depth Secretary of Transportation for Illinois, and he served us well. So I just wanted to get that on the record that certainly the mayor's appreciated all he's done. Again, to piggyback on what Aaron has just said, there's great interest, I'll describe it, by the mayors at the moment about what's going to be the future of federal transportation programming, given the changes that we are now going to see in Washington. And kind of the unofficial action that's been taken, I think the mayors are whispering amongst themselves with the idea that if you get a chance to see any of your U.S. congressmen of your area, or you get a chance to see either one of the Illinois United States senators, you need to express to them your concerns about the federal transportation program and its viability. And after 2026, when the current bill expires, that it's going to continue to be a high priority. And I don't think anybody really knows. There's so much coming out of the new administration already about what the ideas they have. Nobody's quite sure where we're all going with all this, but there's some priorities that I know the mayors feel transportation has to be high on the agenda. If you get a chance, as I say, to see your congressman or your U.S. senator, that's one of the things you should talk about. In my town, I've got 7 senior living communities in Batavia, and I will tell you that the big conversation amongst our folks is the future of Social Security. There's been a lot of conversation about it. Nothing's happened to it, but boy, I'm sure any of the congressmen in our area that walk into one of those places, they're going to get that right in their face right now about where we're going with Social Security. It, nothing to do with us here today, but those are just kind of the 2 intensified high points of government that are in the faces of a lot of people. The Council of Mayors last met in September, and we took a deep dive into the complex transportation funding processes and CMAP's critical role in that process. And I think there was general consensus that we are, I'll use the word blessed, or can really supported very strongly by CMAP, by what they do, and kind of keep us focused on what we need to do to get grants and processes working. And so this is a organization that really does hold a esteemed high sense of value in the eyes of the mayors. Next week, the Council of Mayors is going to meet, and we're going to have, one of the things we've asked for is we'd like to have a briefing with the National Weather Service, because there seems to be some pretty dynamic changes in weather taking place around us, and we're wanting to see where they think maybe all of this is going. I've had some people suggest that, well, we probably aren't going to see much snow in Illinois anymore because of climate change. I think we'd like to hear that. If that's true or not true, we'd like to hear it from the folks at the Weather Bureau as to what they think is going to be the future here, because certainly in each municipality, and there's 200, and depending on who you talk to and what boundaries they're figuring, it's either 275 or 284 are the 2 numbers that are kicked around. And amongst those cities, the weather is a big thing, because they all are responsible for cleaning their own streets and salting their streets and making sure they have all the proper things they need to do that. And so the weather is a very popular thing, and that we're pleased that the Weather Bureau has agreed to come to our meeting next week and have some conversations with us. Then we're going to welcome a new member to the Council of Mayors. That's Mayor Michelle Nelson from Flossmoor, and she's going to be coming on. She'll be joining us. But regrettably, we've got 4 mayors in our group that are not running for reelection. And those are Mayor George Van Dusen of Skokie, Mayor Greg Langmus of Northfield, Mayor Tom Hayes of Arlington Heights, and President Karen Darch of Barrington. And all those people have been significant voices and contributors into the mayor's area here. So we're just hoping that we have some vocal replacements coming on board. And of course, then most of the rest of us on the board are all facing reelection and on April Fool's Day, April 1st. And that's kind of a joke amongst the mayors as to why would you have an election day on April Fool's Day? But we are, so that's what we're going to do. So I will look forward to reporting to the committee at our next meeting in March. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to talk to me after the meeting. I should be around for a few minutes and carry forth any idea you may have. So thank you.
So at this time, we will move to section 5.01 for a report on the fiscal year 2026 Unified Work Program.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kama Dobbs. I'm the principal for Federal Transportation Funding Programs and use she, her pronouns. This morning, I'll provide an overview of the fiscal year 2026 Unified Work Program budget for your consideration. The Unified Work Program, or UWP, is a requirement for documenting the work plan and budget for the required transportation planning activities that are the responsibility of the MPO. Next slide. CMAP relies on both our own staff and our planning partners in the region to assist with accomplishing the work plan through two UWP funding programs: an annual core program that consists of activities and tasks to meet federal requirements, as well as a multi-year competitive program that consists of other transportation planning activities that support federal, state, and local planning priorities for transportation. The annual core program is developed by soliciting budget proposals from our eligible planning partners for ongoing core activities. These proposals are reviewed by staff for reasonableness, and every effort is made to accommodate the request to ensure that all MPO requirements for the region are accomplished in a cooperative and cost-effective manner. This cycle is detailed in your packet memo and shown here. We receive budget requests for core activities from 16 agencies, including CDOT, the 11 councils of mayors, which are rolled up as COM on the slide here, the CTA, the McHenry County DOT, METRA, and PACE. Staff did work with individual agencies, including some of the councils, CDOT and METRA, to make some minor revisions that had little or no impact on the bottom line amounts of funding requested. We also worked with the CTA to make adjustments to staff hours to ensure that individual staff were not over budgeted and to bring the overall request into closer alignment with the rest of the submittals. The resulting recommended core program for external agencies for fiscal year 2026 is just under 5.7 million, most of which is for direct personnel costs. The second component of the UWP is the competitive program, which is a 5-year program developed by NELE by soliciting for one-time projects that are scored competitively using criteria established in the UWP methodology that was developed in 2023. That first 5-year program was established last year for projects to be implemented in fiscal years 2025 through 2029. Though no requests were received for 28 and 29, which is why those are zeros in this chart. Next year, we'll solicit for additional projects and we'll shift that 5-year period to cover 2027 through 2031. So as shown here on the slide in the highlighted column, the competitive program projects that this body approved last year totaled just under 1.1 million. When combined, the total allocation of fiscal year 2026 UWP funds to external agencies is 6.7 million, which leaves 27.5 million to be utilized by CMAP for MPO activities and operations. It is worth noting that this funding is only a part of the CMAP comprehensive budget and work plan that Aaron's going to talk about a little bit later on the agenda. In total, the FY26 UWP includes 34.25 million for transportation planning activities. 27.4 of that is from our federal partners and 6.85 is made up by state and local matching funds. These allocations are shown in summary by sponsor on the slide with additional activity level detail for external agencies provided in the packet memo. Since CMAP's comprehensive budget is still under development, we haven't yet allocated those funds to specific activities, which is why we'll see TBD on this summary for personnel and expenses for CMAP, as well as TBD for individual activities in the longer table in the memo. The CMAP board will be discussing the agency work plan next Monday and taking action on the agency's comprehensive budget in February. As those discussions progress, staff will be able to fill in the missing activity level details in the UWP. In addition to the budget summarized here, the UWP document will contain several appendices that detail the sources of local match, civil rights, environmental justice requirements, staffing requirements, audit requirements, an acronym list, all the things we need to meet federal requirements, as well as a summary of other transportation planning studies that are expected to be underway in the region next year that are using other fund sources. So at this time, staff is requesting MPO Policy Committee approval of the UWP funding allocations described by me and detailed in the packet memo and recommended by the Transportation Committee for inclusion in the FY26 UWP. The final UWP document with all of those details and appendices will be provided to the committee once it's completed. Should any substantive changes to the allocations be proposed during the development of the CMAP comprehensive budget, those changes will be brought back to this committee in March for approval.
Thank you very much, Kama, for your report. Can I get a motion at this time to approve the fiscal year 2026 Unified Work Program?
Metzger makes motion. I'll second. And I just wanted to make a comment real quick, if I may.
Yes.
That I appreciate all the work the UWP committee, CMAP staff is doing to move this process up earlier in the year. It's going to be very helpful for development of what we do with them. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Holly. Are there any other comments or discussion items? All right. Hearing no other discussions, is those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Got to remember to wait for those online. Those opposed, say nay. All right, ayes have it, motion passes. So at this time, we'll move on. Thank you very much. So this time we move on to section 5.02, 2025 roadway safety targets. Victoria Barrett, our senior planner, will present.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Victoria Barrett. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a senior transportation planner in our Regional Policy and Implementation Division, and I'm here today to present on the 2025 roadway safety targets, which were also included in your packet. Before I jump in, I just want to say that today's targets represent the hopeful goals for roadway safety in 2025. Traffic safety issues, as you know, are complex and often require long timelines to realize real change. And I just want to remind everyone that our Safe Travel for All roadmap is urgently and comprehensively directed at reducing roadway fatalities and serious injuries in our region. Today, I'll start with an overview of safety targets and their approval process. I'll then present the 2025 draft roadway safety performance targets for your approval. And I'll talk a little bit about our goals for the targets program in the coming years. First, a quick overview of what safety targets are and why we need to set them. The FHWA's Transportation Performance Management Program, TPM for short, we love our acronyms, is a required reporting program that asks states to report on a number of assets and conditions, such as bridge condition and pavement condition, which you'll hear about in a few minutes. The goal of the TPM program is to inform investment decisions, the work that's needed to be done, and help deliver progress in the form of funding, assistance, and other resources. The MPO Policy Committee, your role here, is the responsible party for approving these targets per federal rule. And perhaps more importantly than the process of establishing targets, I just want to highlight that the targets program has really is really the birth of our traffic safety program at CMAP. When we reported in 2019 on targets for the first time to our Transportation Committee, it led to the birth of the STAR program. So it keeps safety at the forefront of our work. The safety targets are the primary indicators for the Highway Safety Improvement Program, known as HSIP, which is a core federal aid program. And CMAP reports on these targets annually, as does IDOT, and I'll talk a little bit about that process going forward. So the process for MPOs to set safety targets starts with the state. So here, that of course is the Illinois Department of Transportation, which shares their targets with us and other MPOs in the state in August or September, along with their HSIP annual report. CMAP staff then reviews the targets and develops a recommendation. Next, the targets and the staff recommendation are shared with the Transportation Committee, which we did in November of last year. And then the staff recommendation is brought to this committee for approval. The targets will also be shared with the board in February. The Federal Highway Administration requires 5 safety targets to be identified. These targets give an appropriate snapshot of traffic safety per federal rule, indicating both raw numbers and rates per amount of travel. The 5 targets are number of fatalities, rate of fatalities per 100 million miles of vehicle travel, number of serious injuries, rate of serious injuries, and the number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries combined. And now I will present the 2025 draft roadway safety targets. This table details all 5 of the 2025 targets, which are indicated in the far right column in yellow. I'll go into each of these in more detail, but I'd like to point out that the base years on this table, which are the first step in identifying targets, only go until 2022, because at the time that the 2025 targets were set, 2022 was the last year for which data about safety had been finalized. So I just want to point out that detail. And yeah, I'll go through each of these in more detail now. So this page shows both targets related to fatalities. It shows the trends in fatalities between 2018 and 2023. That's the top graph. The bottom graph shows the rate of fatalities per 100 million miles of vehicle travel. As you can see, fatalities have been trending upward, shown by the green 5-year average line. And the yellow dots on this chart are the past year's targets, which were identified. As you can see, the state has not met the safety targets related to fatalities or the fatality rate target. And because the trend line is based on years leading up to 2022, it is still trending upward. But as you can see, the actual number of fatalities, thankfully, since 2021 has come down. The hope is that this downward trend will be visible in the 5-year average next year, and that it will turn downward, which we all, of course, want, and will support more aggressive target setting in the future. The target for traffic fatalities for 2025, represented by the red circle, represents a 2% policy-based reduction from the 5-year average from the previous year. The target for 2025 for roadway fatalities is 1,099.5. Similarly, the rate of fatalities per VMT trended upward in the base years used to set the targets. So a 2% policy-based reduction was used for this target as a hopeful goal for what will happen in the future, resulting in a target of 1.083 fatalities per 100 million miles of vehicle travel. Serious injuries, in contrast to fatalities, have been decreasing since 2018, suggesting that there may be a trend towards more serious crashes. Because this trend is going in the desired direction, a different method was used to set this target, which is a trend line method. And the target for 2025 for the number of serious injuries is 7,816.8. Similar to serious injuries, the rate of serious injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled is also trending downward. So a trend line or least squares method was used to identify this target of 8.046 serious injuries per 100 million miles of vehicle travel. And finally, the last target is the non-motorized fatal and serious injuries target, as shown here. This target represents a composite method with non-motorized fatalities using a 2% policy-based method and non-motorized serious injuries using a trend line method. These two were added to identify a 2025 target of 1,332.4. Our recommendation, staff recommends to support the targets that I've presented here today as identified by the Illinois Department of Transportation for 2025. By agreeing to support IDOT safety targets, the MPO is not agreeing to any specific share of the decrease in fatalities and serious injuries. Instead, it is agreeing to integrate the targets as goals in the metropolitan planning process and to plan and program projects that help meet the state's targets. And as indicated earlier, our Safe Travel for All roadmap, which has the goal of eliminating traffic fatalities by the year 2050, as also indicated in our On to 2050 plan, we are looking forward to the opportunity to align our regional safety action planning work, which is underway right now, with the target setting program. Our goal is our STAR program includes, as you've heard about, and as Aaron mentioned earlier in this meeting, a large-scale regional safety action planning effort funded by the U.S. Department of Transportation's Safe Streets for All grant program. This program of work is well underway and is improving our understanding of and influence on traffic safety in the region. And upon completion of this effort, we will have a robust work plan of projects and programs identified to reduce fatalities and serious injuries in our region. And we see this as a moment of opportunity to integrate our plan of work with the identification of regional roadway safety targets. So it is our hope to identify regional safety targets in alignment with our next regional transportation plan. And with that, I will ask for a motion for approval.
Thank you very much, Victoria, for your report. I will ask for an approval and then we'll open it up for discussion. So at this time, can I get a motion to approve the 2025 roadway safety targets?
Jeff Shelkey, representing the Council of Mayors, is proud to make that motion.
Is there a second?
Rabia, second.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to open the floor up for any discussion. Yes.
I just want to make a couple comments. Thank you very much for the report. Just for all of us in the room, all of us online, the policy set, reduction goal is, we're trying to get to zero.
Mhm.
And so that makes perfect sense. But something that was mentioned here, serious injuries are down. Fatalities are up. We are trading. So as people kill themselves instead of hurt themselves, we see those numbers change. So I guess my point here is simply all of us have a microphone. All of us talk to people like this. We go back, we talk to our employers, we talk to our staff, we talk to our constituents, we talk to our friends and our neighbors. So behavior matters. A lot of this is behavior driven. So just when you have the opportunity, just remind folks, put the phone down, buckle up the seatbelt, slow down, and, being in the middle of the back seat when you're ejected from a vehicle at 70 miles an hour doesn't make not wearing that seatbelt a good idea. Buckle up. A lot of folks are killed because they're unrestrained. So all of this is sometimes beyond the ability of the engineers in the room to help, but we have to try. That's all.
Thank you very much, Steve, for your comments. Any additional comments from anyone? All right, before we wrap things up on this subject, I want to just also make a comment from an Illinois Tollway perspective, and just to kind of echo the comments that were made by Steve. We've all seen it ever since, COVID, the numbers, as we've kind of all moved back into some sort of form of, work and travel. The number of fatalities we have seen, directly significantly increase. And it's a nationwide problem, actually, as I'm on a number of boards from a global perspective, and we talk about traffic patterns. We across, globally have seen, even just obviously in North America, that fatalities are on the rise for everyone. And also to Steve's point, we've recognized that it really comes down to each and one of us and customer and driver behavior. Speed kills, which is again why we see the number of fatalities, and then distracted driving is also a big issue. And from a tollway perspective, we are really taking and pushing forward an initiative that will launch in April, which is a speed awareness campaign. And we'll be using a number of social media channels and customers and just hearing from, people that have been impacted, from a family perspective, at a loss of a loved one that maybe did not make the right decision, in a moment. And so it's really just our desire is through these campaigns is to make sure that we all know that we have an opportunity as individual drivers to make a change and how we're driving and spreading the word that, again, slow down, so that we can have an impact on bringing these fatalities, down within our region. So I just want to thank you, Victoria, for your report. And again, thanks to the committee for hopefully approve it as I move on to, we've approved the targets, and that again, each of us within our respective organizations just push out what we need to do to impact safety. So thank you.
And I think with that, we need the all in favors.
Yes,
We've got the
sorry.
motions.
I got the motion. So before I conclude in this section, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, motion passes. So that's what happens when you are chairing and have a comment and you forget to move. Continue through the agenda. All right, so moving on to section 5.03, 2026 Highway Asset Condition Targets. Martin Menninger, Program Lead, will present.
Morning, I'm Martin Menninger, Program Lead for Achieving Performance Outcomes. I use he, him pronouns. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about our federal pavement and bridge condition targets. You'll see a lot of similarities to our safety targets. So next slide. Our safety targets are set on an annual cycle. Bridge and pavement are on a 4-year cycle. And as our current cycle started in 2022, as part of their midpoint performance report, IDOT adjusted their targets in October 2024. This triggers 180 days for MPOs to either support state targets or adopt our own. Last month, we discussed targets with the Transportation Committee, and they supported staff recommendations to continue past practices. That means supporting state on pavement targets and supporting sub-regional targets for bridges and pavement. Next slide. Since pavement targets were first set in 2018, CMAP has supported over 80 local pavement asset management plans. Also, IDOT has developed asset management plans and implemented an enterprise asset management software for bridges and pavement. The data underlying pavement targets changed since we set targets in 2018. So in 2021, we switched to supporting IDOT's pavement targets. There are 4 pavement targets, each for interstate and non-interstate, good and poor. IDOT's has adjusted their targets for percent good to better align with anticipated investments, and adjusted their interstate target for percent poor to better align with sort of past trends. They've been consistently achieving and beating that target. There's no change for the non-interstate pavement targets. Next slide. For bridges, bridge condition, we have asset condition data going back decades. While conditions have improved since the 90s and early 2000s, that trend is increasingly difficult to maintain. Many of our NHS bridges were built in the dirt with the interstates in the 1950s and 60s. As these bridges reach 70 or 80 years old, they still serve travelers, but are increasingly costly to maintain and repair. Next slide. CMAP's sub-regional targets recognize that the age of the bridges will continue. The bridges will continue to age in this region, and as that age increases, we hope to maintain existing conditions through more timely maintenance and increased investment, but we don't see that condition will significantly improve due to the sort of size of the problem we're facing. So we're suggesting no change for these targets. Next slide. So going forward, we will be adjusting all of our federal targets. You heard about two of them today: safety and asset condition on the roadway system. We have targets for safety and asset condition on the transit system, and system performance, which is mostly related to congestion. All 5 of those areas will be updated as part of the RTP that you'll hear about later today. In preparation for setting those asset condition targets, we're working with IDOT and their new asset management tool to develop different scenarios and understand the financial implications of different targets. RTA has a similar tool called COST that we're working with them to understand different funding levels and what we could achieve there. All of that information will feed into our financial plan and help us understand the scale and need of investments needed for the region, and how that could influence our fiscal constraint. With that, there are any questions?
Thank you, Martin, for your report. At this time, can I get a motion to approve the 2026 highway asset condition targets?
Mayor Shilkey was so moved.
Frank Beal, CMAP, second.
Is there any discussion?
I did have a question, which is that a portion of the roads are listed as good, another portion is poor. What's the word you use for the rest of it?
Fair. So
Fair. Okay.
there are 3 potential options.
Okay. Thank you.
We only have targets for 2. So.
All right.
All right, any other discussion? Yes, Holly.
Yeah, I'd just like to say the way we can classify pavements vary significantly. So if you're ever having trouble sleeping, we can fill you in on that. But I just wanted to thank CMAP again on working on this and working with us on the safety targets, the asset condition targets, and all our TPM. This most recent with the performance management, if we have NHS bridges greater than 10% of our square footage of NHS bridges in poor condition, we have restrictions on how we can spend our federal funds. And we have been in that penalty since it has existed. But I'm happy to report that it is anticipated within the next 5 years, we will be out of that because of the work that this region's doing, IDOT is doing, in order to bring those NHS bridges into a state of good repair. And so that is a phenomenal milestone for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Is there any other discussion? All right, great. Those in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye.
And
Aye.
those opposed, say nay. All right, ayes have it, motion passes. All right, we'll move on to section 5.04 of the agenda this morning. On to 2025 to 2029 TIP conformity analysis and TIP amendment. Russell, a senior analyst, will present.
Good afternoon. Included in your packet today is the onto 2050, 2023 to 2028 TIP conformity amendment 25-03. CMAP region is a non-attainment area for ozone, thus we are required under the Clean Air Act to demonstrate that projects in the TIP conform to the motor vehicle emissions budget for our area through a regional emissions analysis. Specifically, projects in the TIP subject to air quality analysis requirements demonstrate one model that the region does not exceed our motor vehicle emissions budget, which is shown at the end of the memo in your packet. I want to highlight that emissions modeling was done using a new US EPA model called MOOS-4. MOOS-4 has several enhancements and accounts for new finalized rules such as the EPA heavy duty low NOx rule for model years 2027 and later. The impacts of these rules, particularly the low NOx rule, resulted in a significant reduction in modeled NOx emissions after 2030 that continued through 2050, which is the last year that we model. Using MOOS-4 also enabled CMAP to model the impacts of electric vehicles in the near and long term in a way that CMAP had not been able to do with previous models. Moose 4 is only modeling on-road transportation emissions, so electrical generation is not part of our analysis, but we are able to capture the impacts of EVs as part of the vehicle fleet mix in a much more robust way. I also want to mention that the region has failed to attain the current ozone standards and will be reclassified to serious non-attainment effective January 16th. The most tangible result for this committee to understand is that we will likely have to develop a new motor vehicle emissions budget that'll be more strict than the one that we currently have. The conformity amendment memo, CMAP's modeling approach, and the impacts of the Moves 4 model were discussed at a recent Tier 2 interagency consultation meeting, and the members expressed support for how CMAP is going about the emissions modeling and conformity process. The memo and the list of projects included in the conformity amendment was released for a 30-day public comment period, and no public comments were received. This time, CMAP staff requests approval of the ON-2 2050, 2023 to 2028 TIP conformity analysis and TIP conformity amendment 25-03 as presented. And if there are questions, I can answer them after the motion's been made.
All right, thank you very much for your report, Russell. At this time, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the ON to 2050, 2025 to 2029 TIP conformity analysis and TIP amendment 25-03.
So moved, McHenry.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
100 seconds.
Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Ayes have it, motion passes. All right, thank you very much. All right, let's move on to section 6.0, and I'll turn things over to Erin.
Great.
Mhm.
Well, thank you very much. We're moving into the non-approval portion of our agenda here, some informational items here. I wanted to share with you all some key highlights from the CMAP's draft FY26 work plan, which includes activities that we will continue or begin during the period of July 1, 2025 through June 30th of 2026. We will present this work plan and preliminary budget next week to the CMAP board for their approval and ask for their final approval in February. So just to start off here about what guides our work, obviously the long-range transportation plan of our region ON-2 2050 certainly helps provide us with direction and focus. But for many years, our region has relied on one single large-scale comprehensive plan. And while I believe that has truly served our region very well over the past, soon to be our 20th anniversary here, one of the things that we've been talking about is when we work with our partners, they're often interested in details that go beyond the policies that exist in this document. And so we really want to provide a multi-plan framework that provides a more dynamic and responsive approach to our region's challenges and the opportunities that exist in the upcoming years. So together, these plans are really going to continue to support and support and serve the region as a comprehensive plan. Our 5-year strategic direction really provides us as an agency in a way to prioritize our work in 3 separate areas. One, transportation, of course, climate, and our regional economy, and thinking about how all of those 3 areas intersect, as well as providing insight and guidance to our agency-wide services and operations. So since publishing the strategic direction in 2023, the agency has embarked on a comprehensive process to truly define all of the areas, transportation, regional economic competitiveness, and climate, and the work that we are going to embark on over the next 3 to 5 years. The program areas really include a portfolio of projects that are high priority for the agency. Each program area is led by a program manager. We also have program areas for agency-wide services such as communications, engagement, finance, and human resources. So these are guiding plans that, along with the bigger programs, that will inform our activities for the fiscal year, which we outline in our annual budget and work plan. So we are a truly unique agency, and while there are many of us across the region, as we think about how we impact the work across our region, we don't build anything. And so we've spent a lot of time thinking about what are our levers for change here at CMAP, and you'll see them here on the screen that they are to plan regionally and locally through our comprehensive planning, through our technical assistance offerings that we have, really influence change by making sure that we are putting together really comprehensive data insights on key indicators from across the region, and help inform the public policy discussions here in our region and beyond, and that we're thinking about investing strategically, that we're programming our federal transportation funds that achieve our state and local goals, that we're thinking about the transportation improvement program, but that we're also collaborating and convening our partners to have strategic conversations on the future of our region's transportation system. Next slide. So our fiscal year 26 work plan continues our excellent legacy here at the agency, our nearly 20 years of strong planning, policy, research, and analysis, really leaning into the power of data that we harness here at CMAP and the story that it tells. And again, this idea of collaboration, that we can advance our solutions together collaboratively and be stronger, more competitive region here. So the activities in our work plan really propel this commitment into actionable steps for the year. So in developing the 26 work plan, we took a close look at our planned activities, our capacity, our resources, and alignment with the strategic direction. The concept of multi-year programs is fairly new to us on the operational side of things for our work plan, but it's something that we're really used to doing as we think about our transportation improvement program processes overall. So many of the projects that you'll see in our work plan aren't new. They're continuing ongoing projects or a sort of follow-up phase to work that we have already taken on. Wanted to highlight a couple of items related to our technical assistance program. On 2550 underscores the need for local investments, for collaboration across jurisdictions, and for building local capacities. We know that most communities can't do it on their own, and that's why we're here to help. We continue to build capacity through direct training, through technical assistance and implementation support across the region. And for almost a decade and a half, this program has helped more than 300 communities achieve and complete projects that they are interested in at the local level that help advance their goals and help bring that intersection of regional goals and local goals together here. You know, the selected projects this year that you'll see in our program really help to increase compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, improvements that protect bicyclists and pedestrians, that prepare communities for grant opportunities, and address other long-term planning needs. And those issues aren't just sort of happenstance. You heard about them this morning, the safety, you know, really thinking about sort of pavement conditions. And you'll hear again on the agenda here in a moment about our Americans with Disabilities program. We have a whole map on our website that's interactive now that you can highlight and look at the projects that have been completed and those that are underway. Thank you to the planning team for all of their dedication and work that they do on an annual basis here. We also have a grant from the MacArthur Foundation that supports this work. We also continue to provide direct support to communities in our region to improve accessibility, hosting 16 workshops in 2024 across the region. As a result, we have 75 new municipal ADA coordinators designated across the region. Well, you know, it's a step along the path of getting to the 200 plus that are required, and we'd love to achieve full compliance here soon. It's a significant increase in where we were when we started this ADA program. You know, the team concluded trainings on accessibility compliance requirements. They created a library of captioned video recordings for municipal staff to be able to think about compliance and how they can help support their communities achieving compliance as well. Communities in the region also received direct technical assistance from CMAP to develop ADA transition plans for streets, sidewalks, crosswalks, and public access, public right-of-way areas as well. So again, you'll hear more about this program from Jamie next. Also in 2026, we will be continuing to support we will support the work of the I-290 Blue Line Corridor Development Program. We will continue to see how the Plan of Action for Regional Transit can help shape legislative discussions in Springfield and making sure that our transit system averts the fiscal cliff by the end of 2026. And we'll continue to lead in the climate space with our comprehensive climate action plan for Greater Chicago area and really shepherd the regional transportation planning process as well. Also continuing in FY 2026 will be our work on safety, our Safe Streets for All grants across the program. As a reminder, this work is funded by nearly $4 million in a Safe Streets for All DOT grant with support from the Illinois Department of Transportation and the local counties that we're working with as well. By working together, we truly believe our region can maximize the impact of local and system-wide traffic safety impacts. And as Steve Travia mentioned earlier, the more that we can do to socialize the fact that it really is everybody's responsibility to reduce traffic fatalities, I think the more we hope to see those numbers shift as well. Continuing in FY 2026, as well, we created a new emissions forecasting analysis program as we think about, our climate work and the work that we've embarked on over the past couple of years. We felt like it was important to bring this focus and provide a framework to support our policy and plan development related to emissions, as well as our transportation program activities by performing conformity analysis that are in compliance with the National Environmental Policy Act, and project evaluation as well. So this program encompasses a full understanding of the agency's existing forecast requirements and tools, and will help us anticipate future needs that we may have in this area as well. So just a few highlights from our overall budget and work plan, but just wanted to give those to you. I picked a few that were more relevant to this committee, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Hearing none, I think that concludes my report on our annual work plan and budget.
Thank you very much, Erin. Now we'll move on to 6.002 on our agenda, Accessible Communities Program Update. And Jermaine Jackson will present. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for having me this morning. My name is Jamie Jackson. I'm a principal in the Planning Division and the program manager for the Accessible Communities Program. I'm very excited to be here with you this morning to share some very exciting updates. A lot has been done in the last couple years, but I want to, before we move on with the slides, bring you back to 2021. Seems like a million years ago. It was only 4 years ago. And at that time, Dr. Yochai Eisenberg, who was at MPC at the time, published a really groundbreaking report called Where the Sidewalk Ends. And it put into perspective where our region is at with compliance with the ADA with regard to transition plans. His findings were not great. At that same time, we were getting our recertification from the FHWA, and they really brought this information to light. So through that and support from IDOT, thank you very much for that, we were able to jumpstart this Accessible Communities program, and I'm going to start diving into that. So next slide. So I want to just give an overview of who this really impacts in our region. So our data shows that 10% of the population in the region report having a disability. The older you get, the more likely you are to have a disability. But also keep in mind that disability can be short-term. We are all one crash or accident away from a disability. Even the CDC can reports that 1 in 4 people have a disability at any given time. So this really does impact all of us. All right, next slide, please. So when we're talking about the ADA, we're looking at Title II, specifically public rights of way. So things such as a tree, uprooting a sidewalk can impact the mobility of someone that uses a mobility device. Chairs within the right of way for just outdoor dining can impact someone just trying to cross that sidewalk. Where we put our infrastructure can impact mobility. I have a couple examples on the next slide. Again, policies such as snow removal can have a significant impact on how we move around our region. And while we love a sheltered bus stop, it doesn't make a difference if you can't get to it safely. Next slide, please. So what are the actual requirements of Title II of the ADA? And this is a requirement for all public entities. So most communities are required to have these 5 things done. So these are communities with 50 or more employees. So for our region, that's 241 of our communities. So we need to have a notice to the public posted on your website. You need to conduct a self-evaluation. So that is a list of all the barriers in your facilities, your programs, your rights of way. What are those barriers to accessibility? You should have someone on staff that is designated to handle any issues regarding the ADA. You should have a formal grievance procedure in place and develop a transition plans, which you look at all those barriers that you found in your self-evaluation and provide a plan of action of how you're going to rectify and remove those barriers. Next slide. So in 2022, we conducted a municipal survey, and this is what we found. Only 38 communities of those 241 that are required to have a transition plan actually have one in place. That's only 15%. Not great. So what have we done since? And this is where the fun starts. And do the next slide. Training. So Aaron already spoke to this. We did a lot of training. So thank you to the 12 municipalities that helped host our training. We partnered with the Illinois Development Board, Capital Development Board, to even provide training on the Illinois Accessibility Code. These were very well-attended trainings, 273 unique attendees, many going to multiple trainings for a total of 464 total attendees. 140 organizations throughout the region were represented, including 86 municipalities. Next slide. We're also providing direct technical assistance. So through our call for projects, we've identified these communities that you see here. Round 1 projects we hope to have completed by the end of this fiscal year, and we are kicking off round 2 projects this month. We will also offer this technical assistance in our next call for projects, which is coming up in the next few months. We also wanted to look at what the best practices were. So we tapped into student labor, I should say, and they helped us look at what is the tie between accessible infrastructure and economic development. So our first cohort of students just said, you need to do a cost-benefit analysis. Great. So we went back to some other students. We're like, okay, given the information that the first round of students have found, is there a relationship between a community investing in accessible infrastructure and economic development? We did not find any clear link, but we did find that communities with transition plans are going to be more accessible in general. The other thing that we're looking at is regional outreach and engagement. So in the next few months, we will be pulling together a regional steering committee, which we've named CUDA. We're still workshopping that idea and that name, but we want regional representation of people with disabilities. Let's hear what are the issues impacting them on a day-to-day basis, and we want to compensate them for their time and expertise. We are also convening a group of ADA coordinators. We have a lot of new coordinators, as Aaron mentioned. 75 new folks have been appointed into this role. We understand that this is new for many people. So this group just brings together all these ADA coordinators, and it's an opportunity for them to speak to each other, talk about challenges, and work together for solutions. So our next meeting is going to be next month, and we're very excited for that one. Finally, one of the things that we are very proud of, and I'm very proud of my team for doing this, is pulling together templates. So while we cannot provide transition plans for every single community as much as we'd want to, we do have tools in place to help communities get in compliance with at least a few of those administrative requirements. So available on our website for anyone to use, we have these plug and play templates. Take that notice, post it on your website. You can see our ADA coordinator job description and what needs to be put on a website, and also a grievance procedure. So again, we want to make this easy for folks to start coming into compliance with the ADA. And so where are we now? We've had this program in place for just over 2 years, and I am very happy to report that we have some really significant positive things that we can report back. So I should note that this slide is a little bit misleading. Those two bars should be next to each other. They're not cumulative. But in the time of these past 2+ years, we've seen a significant increase. Again, the number of ADA coordinators has jumped 255% from where we started. That's the most significant change. Notice has increased from 77 communities to 111 communities now having notice posted on their website. That's a 44% increase. Multiple communities have also established a grievance procedure, almost a 20% increase from where we started. So as a person that has done long-range planning for most of my career, it's very exciting to see such big change over such a short amount of time. I will also note that CMAP as a public entity, we have also designated our own ADA coordinator in that time, Claire Williams. We have our own notice posted on our website, and we have established a grievance procedure as well, which we did not have previously. All right, I think that's what I have so much more in store for this next fiscal year. We are going to have more trainings coming up. So this is going to be the accessible public engagement training. This is going to be for your municipal staff, all leaders, anyone that's a public entity that hosts a public meeting like you're at today. How do we ensure that it's fully accessible? How do we ensure that if someone has a request for accommodation, you know what to do? So those trainings will be upcoming. We're going to continue with raising that awareness to communities of what their requirements are under the ADA. And we're going to continue to track regional compliance. A final thing to note, and this is going to impact every single one of us here, is that the US DOT formally adopted ProWAG as a standard. They are no longer guidelines. So we have a national standard now for how our roadways, our curb ramps, our crosswalks, our pedestrian activated signals, we have that as a standard, not just guidelines. So every project that you do in your roadway, if you alter or reconstruct, needs to be in compliance with the public rights of way accessibility guidelines as of next Friday. So with all of that, just want to leave you with the curb cut effect. So if you haven't heard of this, it's that even though this program is directed towards people with disability and improving their lives, it actually improves the lives of everyone. So just because someone needs a wheelchair to use a curb cut doesn't mean it's just for them. Parents pushing strollers, kids using scooters, delivery folks with their trolleys, closed captioning. It's intended for people that have a hearing disability, but I know I use it all the time because the explosions are so loud, but the dialogue is so quiet. So when we do these programs and we look at these policies for people with disabilities, we just know that it will impact and make life and the world better for everyone. So thank you for your time. I'm so happy that I could share this with you. I hope to be back soon with more updates. And yeah, happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions? All right. Well, thank you very much for your ADA updates, and we look forward to just hearing more and the progress on the many initiatives that you discussed with us today. So thank you. All right. At this point, we'll move on to 6.03, the Regional Transportation Plan update, and Ryan will present. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Ryan Tomto. I'm a principal policy analyst here at CMAP. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm here today to provide an update on the progress to develop the next regional transportation plan. Oh, sorry, not. Too tall, thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, that's good, thank you. Let me move this far. Okay, so on the next slide, as a reminder, the Regional Transportation Plan, or RTP, serves as the long-term blueprint for our region's transportation system, guiding decision-making and infrastructure investments for the next 25 years. The RTP is developed in collaboration with local leaders, transportation agencies, community organizations, and the public. It is informed by research, technical analysis, policy development, and community outreach. The process is structured to address three key questions. What is the transportation system? What is the transportation system that we want? What are the challenges and opportunities to get there? And how do we achieve it? As a reminder, the plan must be adopted by October of 2026 in order to meet our federal required timeline. And so there are many streams of work happening right now, streams of work covering each of the things shown here on this slide. But today's update is really focused specifically on that capital investments portion of the work. So on the next slide, as part of the regional transportation planning process, CMAP coordinates with our regional partners to identify, assess, and prioritize capital investments to include within the regional transportation plan. In the past, these projects have been referred to as major capital projects, and then later on, regionally significant projects. This presentation will cover why we identify, assess, and prioritize projects as part of the RTP. We'll review how the process has evolved over time, highlighting how this process has evolved from Go to 2040 to On to 2050. We'll share potential process updates that we're currently considering for this coming plan, and we'll discuss next steps. So why do we identify, assess, and prioritize capital investments as part of the RTP development process? This slide lists out the many reasons for doing so, but ultimately this process is meant to provide a clear vision for what we have ahead of us in the future. It's an opportunity for the region to consider the projects that are slated between now and 2050, assess their impacts on both people and places, and then prioritize them based on their ability to help the region achieve the goals within the various financial and regulatory constraints that we have. So on the next slide, some of those regulatory constraints and requirements are shown here. As the federally designated Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO, as well as being the state designated regional planning agency, or RPA, for Northeastern Illinois, CMAP must comply with numerous state and federal requirements. These requirements set a minimum standard for how CMAP must ensure that future transportation investments are guided by the RTP so that they are equitable, environmentally sustainable, performance-driven, and financially viable. By fulfilling these federal requirements, CMAP ensures the region remains eligible for federal funding. So each plan cycle really represents an opportunity for us to reflect on our existing policies and consider ways that we might improve them. So on the next slide, here's a high-level overview of how the name, definitions, and thresholds have changed over the years and how those changes reflect federal feedback based on federal regulations. For Go to 2040, which was released in 2014, this plan prioritized large projects with a significant effect on capacity. These plans defined major capital projects as large projects with a significant effect on the capacity of the region's transportation system, including extensions or additional lanes on the interstate system. It also included entirely new expressways or similar changes to the passenger rail system. Every 4 years, we have a federal certification review. In 2014, during that review, we were advised that projects should be identified based on impact rather than just scope, and that a more holistic project definition could also better capture true regional priorities. So then as we moved on to 2050, regionally significant projects was a name change, and the definition shifted to include cost threshold plus changes in capacity, which included transit and things like bus rapid transit, and expanded the definition to include system preservation projects over $250 million. Feedback on that plan advised that the next plan, when we do the next plan work, which is where we're at now, that we allow for a more reasonably sized universe of projects to be considered and to allow the plan to identify and prioritize the most critical components of the region or projects within the region and to focus resources on accomplishing them. So really, I'm sharing this background information to highlight how CMAP has identified these projects and how that has evolved over time, and then really to help set the stage for some of those changes we're considering currently. So before we move into the proposed changes, just want to pause for a second because I know there's kind of a lot of information and just see if there were any questions about what was shared there. I think most of you are all pretty familiar with how we've handled this in the past, but just want to take a moment. There was a question. Great. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, each plan cycle presents an opportunity to reflect on our existing policies. To determine if adjustments for the process are warranted for this 2026 RTP, staff conducted the following activities. We gathered information, collecting relevant data, research, and information to provide a comprehensive understanding of the issue. These included reviewing how CMAP's definition and thresholds have evolved over time, reviewing state and federal requirements, and conducting a scan of 18 peer MPOs and their adopted policies and processes for evaluating and selecting regional priorities. CMAP has also engaged regional partners by convening a resource group to surface concerns, ideas, and suggestions. That resource group reflects many of the organizations that are here at this table, and we just really appreciate the time and effort that that staff have put into that resource group. They met over 6 times last year and have really appreciated their time and effort. And we will be continuing to meet with them throughout 2025. Finally, working with the resource group, we developed and assessed various options based on that research and the resource group feedback to consider for this plan. And we really did this by, we looked at the potential changes, looked at what would that have looked like if those changes had been in place for 2050, and determine if the projects that came out of that would look or would meet the needs of, that are required by state and federal requirements, but also the feedback that we heard from the resource group. So based on this assessment, CMAP is currently considering the following updates to the process. One, the first thing is about changing the name. Second is updating the definition. And third, enhancing the way we prioritize projects. So looking at the changing the name, regionally significant projects is the term that was used to identify, and is currently used to identify the effort for Onto 2050. And one of the challenges that was surfaced through this process was that this specific term has a specific meaning within federal regulations tied to the Clean Air Act. And while that sets a minimum level of what we have to comply with as part of this process, our definition for Onto 2050 was not a perfect overlap. And so when folks were going through a NEPA process or other different federal compliance processes, there was a lot of confusion about, are we talking about CMAP's RSPs or are we talking about federal RSPs? One of the things that we are considering is shifting this name from regionally significant projects to regional capital projects. We really came to this by doing a scan again of both the federal requirements to see what kind of term would be consistent with the language used there, as well as looking to see again to our peers, what are the terms that they use to define their, or to title their projects. And so this is really where we landed with regional capital projects. For the second change, the proposed updates to the definition are categorized into 3 different threshold categories. The first is for projects that change the capacity on the national highway system in the fixed guideway regional transit system. The second is to pull in costly projects that might not impact capacity, but will have a significant impact on fiscal constraint. And the third is a category that provides an opportunity for additional projects to be considered in the process at the discretion of CMAP. For the capacity category, the updates to thresholds are the minimum changes necessary to align the process with the Clean Air Act requirements. Northeastern Illinois is in non-attainment for ground level and ozone, and is expected soon to be in a non-attainment for fine particulate matter. Russell is just up here speaking to that. This means that air pollution levels do not meet those Clean Air Act standards intended to protect human health. And since we're in that non-attainment status, the regional transportation plan must analyze all projects that meet the federal definition of regionally significant projects. Again, that's the federal definition for that term. And really, again, it's about that looking ahead. What are the projects out there that are planned between now and 2050? And how do we anticipate those projects will impact our air quality? So that's really that capacity category, is making sure we're fulfilling that requirement. The financial category, this really pulls in it gives us the opportunity to pull in those expensive projects that are likely to have a significant impact on our fiscal constraint. We know that there's limited funding, and this gives us an opportunity to create a space for us to consider what are those costly projects and how do they help us get to the goals that we have. In the third sponsor nominated category, provides the ability for an implementer or CMAP to pull other projects in to be considered through the process. Examples of this would include strategically important freight infrastructure improvements, or pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure projects that are vital to connecting communities, but don't necessarily meet those other thresholds. Agencies might be motivated to include projects through this category if they wanted to elevate those projects and the process and be able to highlight their importance to the region and help them become more competitive for discretionary funding. So based on the TIP data that we use to assess what the potential impacts of these changes would be, we found that it would result in a net change of approximately 30 additional projects would be included had this been in place for on to 2050. So this gives us, oh, sorry, we go back to the previous slide. So this really brings us to the prioritization framework. This is the third update we're considering and really gets to that need that we heard from both our implementing partners, but as well as from FHWA and FTA about how we need to have enhanced prioritization to this process. So we can clearly articulate what are the projects that are helping us achieve our regional goals the most. So as you might recall, at the last meeting, I gave a presentation on the process to develop the next financial plan and how we have the requirement that the plan be fiscally constrained. Essentially, this means that CMAP, again, as we're looking ahead and looking to between now and 2050, what are the revenues we think will be available for transportation and what are the expenditures that we foresee? And then how do we want to prioritize those expenditures given that fiscal constraint? For Go to 2040 and on to 2050, projects either made it onto a fiscally constrained list or they didn't, and that was the extent of the prioritization. Staff are currently exploring the idea of adding an enhanced level of prioritization to this process. This proposed framework would provide or place projects on the constrained list within tiered groups based on how well they achieve regional goals. This prioritization would be conducted through a combination of evaluation criteria, but coupled with consensus building activities that allow for geographic balancing and other factors to be considered. This prioritization framework would be responsive to the recommendations that we've received from FHWA and FTA, but again, also responsive to the feedback we heard from resource group members. It also provides us an opportunity to further integrate project readiness into the process and really helping to identify where there's opportunities for improved coordination and accelerated project delivery to make sure that we're really advancing those top priorities for the region more quickly. And so we'll really get into this in a future meeting or at a future meeting. We'll discuss additional ways that CMAP might be able to leverage a prioritization framework like this to make sure that we're delivering those priority projects as quickly as possible to the traveling public. So on the next slide, just have the next steps. Staff will continue to coordinate with regional partners on finalizing updates and on the definition and thresholds, as well as that prioritization framework. We'll be digging into evaluation criteria and finalizing that, collecting information from projects or from implementing partners to gather those projects to be evaluated. And then later this summer, we'll explore different options for weighting that evaluation criteria and to help inform the consensus building process as we work to finalize a prioritized list of projects. And that brings me to the end of the presentation. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ryan, for your update on the regional transportation plan. And I'll just ask the committee, is there any conversation or discussion or questions for Ryan? Looks like you did a great job, Ryan. All right, well, thank you very much for your report. So at this time, we'll move on to section 7 of our agenda, other business. Is there any other business before the committee this morning?
No other business. I was checking on public comment.
Oh, okay. It looks as if there's no public comment under our section.
Sorry.
Oh,
We do have Garland.
Oh, we do?
Yes.
oh, okay, great. We do have one public comment. Garland.
Happy New Year, everybody. It's Garland Armstrong, formerly of Des Plaines, Illinois, and Elmwood Park, now living in Des Moines, Iowa. How you doing?
Very good, Garland. It wouldn't be a meeting in January if we did not hear from you. So I'm so glad to that you joined us this morning.
That's right. And my wife's birthday was on New Year's Day, too. And she's the New Year's baby, born in the blizzard of 1979. And also the second in Melrose Park, Illinois, and the second New Year's baby born in the Chicagoland area. And we also have our anniversary, too, January 29th, 21 years for us. We got married in Chicago. So just want y'all to know about it.
Oh, well,
And-
happy birthday to your wife and congratulations on your anniversary.
All right. And I want to comment especially on for the sidewalks thing, because as you know, there are some areas in the county that do not have sidewalks, because like the one time in Tinley Park when me and my wife was getting off the Pace bus, going to the church in Tinley Park at Trinity Lutheran Church, there was no sidewalk, and then I had to push her in the streets. But what if that was happening in the snow when they didn't even shovel or salt it down the sidewalks and then have to push in the street? It happened too when we was living in Des Plaines, because the business community refused to. So I just want y'all to make sure to stay on top of that, because when you get extreme snow and they refuse to shovel or salt it down the sidewalks, that's where going to be the barrier is, and how people with disabilities will be able to make it through, like you said. But I want to give kudos to that ADA coordinator there, because she's definitely on top of it, and make sure that disability organizations get that word of mouth of it. But the most important of all is how to translate it in other languages who are disabled and they cannot speak clear English. And I hope you're staying on top of that, because there are some who can't speak clear English, needs a lot of translators for it. So make sure you stay on top of it and make sure that they get the access of it and everything what they need, because it's long overdue for them to really understand how to be well prepared for it. So just to make sure that they really got the understanding and the communication of it. So I'll be glad to answer any questions or comments concerned about that, and make sure that the disability organizations in the 6th county, not just Chicago, but other organizations too in other counties, have access to it also if they're having that same situation.
Well, Garland, I just want to thank you again for your comments, and also for echoing just the very important, information that was communicated, in regards to ADA this morning. Any other comments or?
You too.
Thank
and,
you.
And remember, make sure to drive home safely, and make sure y'all get some hot soup when you're waiting out there in that cold wind chill weather, because me and Heather is deeply concerned about y'all.
Thank you very much, Garland. We appreciate that.
All
So
right.
I'll also ask, are there any other public comments, either from individuals in the room or online?
Nope.
No? All right. All right, well, thank you. We'll move on to section 9 for our next meeting, which is scheduled for March 12th of this year. So we look forward to seeing the committee back, and also the public that would like to attend. Moving on to section 10, which is adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Likely not. Those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, say nay. All right. Motion carries. The meeting has been adjourned. Thank you very much.